both Shark Tank and Target started in January of 2021, and both of them happened just in the past, 2 months, which is crazy.
Hello and welcome to Starting Small. My name is Cameron Nagle, and what you're about to hear is a resilient story to an entrepreneur's journey over the brand that we know and consume today. At Starting Small, I believe that everyone has a story to tell under one philosophy. Everyone starts small. Even these founders have once started where you are, in their parents' kitchen, basement, out of a wagon, and many more. At Starting Small, we discuss the strategies used, the obstacles overcome, and the successes of an entrepreneur's journey. So sit back, relax, and enjoy this episode of Starting Small, and make sure to leave a review to let us know how you enjoyed it. Hello, and thank you for tuning in to Starting Small. Today, I'm joined by Jon Shanahan of Stryx. Jon, thank you so much for joining me today.
Of course. I'm always happy to take a break from TikTok to talk about business.
So I'd like to start out with your upbringing. Where did you grow up, and what would you say your childhood was like?
Yeah, I grew up in Pittsburgh. We moved around a little bit, but we really settled there when I was 5. And growing up, actually both sides of my family owned small businesses. So my mom's side of the family started by my grandparents were, it was a small business, an ice cream store. And what they didn't, in hindsight, you realize this, but they had an ice cream store, which was busy all summer. And then they had a cake and candy supply shop, which was busy all the holidays. And so they both fed on each other and supported each other. And there were a lot of other shops around Pittsburgh that were either just cake and candy supplies or just ice cream. And they would shut down for half of the year. So they fell into that because my grandmother was a professional cake decorator. And then on my dad's side, my grandfather founded a shipping and logistics company in the 80s when there was a lot of deregulation.
Yeah.
And so growing up, it was weird because it was never encouraged for me to run my own company. Everybody wanted me to get a job. I think they saw how hard entrepreneurship was and didn't want to force it upon me.
Yeah.
But as I started to realize that was a viable option, they didn't stop me either. They're like, all right, that's great. You kind of found this on your own. And so that was always really interesting because so much of growing up was just they just run their own stuff. It's they're the bosses, they have employees. And then, I worked at the ice cream store growing up, which was why I was a little heavy child.
Yeah, I was going to kind of lean into that. Growing up, would you say that you had an entrepreneurial mindset, just like your parents did as well, say lemonade stands or selling products?
Yeah, definitely had my share of lemonade stands, but even I would go to the dollar store and I would buy stuff and take it to school and resell it, or candy. And part of that was I just knew from, when we were running the ice cream store, I would go with my grandparents to the restaurant store that you can only go if you're a restaurant, and then see all right, you're buying this and you're going to sell it for this, or, it's repackaged in this way. And so it was never explicitly discussed. It was always just kind of the background of growing up.
Definitely. So I saw you end up going to Roche, I think it is, university. What did you end up studying there?
I actually went to Roche to do graphic design because I fell in love with that when I was in high school. And then when I got to Roche, it was the only accredited design school around Pittsburgh. Okay. And I realized that graphic design was tough. I wasn't good at it. And for me to get so much better, it was going to take a lot more time and effort than I thought I could put in. So I ended up graduating with an IT and management degree because I switched halfway through, as most people tend to do in college, because I had started working at Apple during college. And I was like, all right, IT, technology, I was just as passionate about that as I was about graphic design. And they kind of go hand in hand in a way, which is cool.
Definitely. What did that time period look like for you? Say balancing classes, and you mentioned working at Apple. What did your day-to-day look like with something like that?
It's similar to now. I just always fill my calendar. I was doing 18 credits, whatever the maximum was. And then I was working full time. And So I'd stacked my days where it was Tuesday and Thursday were just my classes. And then every other day was work. And I don't know. I just always do better when I'm just overstacked for some reason. And then I get annoyed that I've filled my calendar up. But because I'd switched halfway through, it was the only way that I could finish college on time because I had enough stuff that didn't transfer from the first year. And then there was a whole thing there. But I've always pretty much filled my time that way.
Got it. Following school and prior to Stryx, then did you continue working at Apple? And then also what kind of other jobs did you flow into in this time period?
Yeah, so I was at Apple for 4 years. It was really the peak of their ascension because I started in 2010, left in 2014. So it was like I started when the iPad launched
Mm.
and I left when the iPhone was on every carrier in the world. And it was just crazy to have like a front row seat to that growth. And then through that experience, I also started to work in like the small business, because every Apple store has like a small business team and they work with companies in the area. And so I got to work with a lot of small businesses that were just getting like their third employee or fourth employee. And there was one company that every week they came in and they were like getting one laptop and then they were getting two laptops every week. And it was like, oh, this company's really growing.
Yeah.
And they were a B2B SaaS platform for retailers. So we used to test new products for major retailers like Kohl's and Gap. And we'd test the products so we could understand pricing and inventory. And then I jumped to them. And that's when I started traveling the world and got to see a lot of cool stuff and really grew in that role because I was there for 4 years as well. I was
Wow.
there 2014 to 2018. And during that time, I built up my YouTube channel and I quit that job to go full time on YouTube.
Wow. And yeah, I want to roll into that because I think that has much inspiration to where you are today and your presence online. What inspired you to really pursue YouTube and such a high caliber channel with especially men's fashion?
Yeah, I was buying clothes for that job because I had to dress. I was pitching like Fortune 500 CEOs. Like I was a 23-year-old kid that had to dress enough to sell, very expensive software. And I was buying all these clothes and I couldn't find videos that I wanted to watch, especially at the time. This was 2014. And I was like, you know what? I got a camera. I can try this out, see where it goes. And then just the consistency over a couple of years, grew an audience. And I had a very distinct perspective on what I wanted to bring to that space. And
Mhm.
it's still nobody's copied it. I thought people would copy it left and right. But those reps, right? I think I made 500 videos in 4 years. I mean, I was
Wow.
like cranking out videos on YouTube, and that was what built the foundation that allowed me to go solo from there, which was really exciting.
What was like that main content strategy? What were you doing? Was it like um fitting yourself or what did that look like?
No, it was mainly that even in 2015, I could see that audiences didn't want like, especially in the women's content side, there were a lot of reviews that were sponsored by a company. And I was like, all right, no sponsorships on my channel. I was like, I'm going to review stuff. I'm never going to take a sponsorship. I will work on affiliates, which is to me the better way to be honest about a product. So if you like a product
Yeah.
and you're an affiliate, then you can get behind it. And there's like a virtuous cycle. And so what I always considered my competitive advantage was that I would have the most trust of any of the YouTube channels because guys
Wow.
knew they could come to me. I would be just giving my own honest opinion and there was no, sponsorships inside of that. And so then I started to work in sponsorships later, more on the educational stuff, but never on the reviews. But my YouTube channel is what ultimately how I found my co-founder, Devere, because he
Wow.
was following the channel at the time. And as Stryx was being incubated, their initial premise is the customers would be these style conscious, style related guys, which is true. We have a lot of them.
Mhm.
But also to build a modern brand, you need somebody that's good at content. So it was like this, it was a two-for strategy there.
Definitely. I would love to hear more about that as we roll into the founding story of Strix. So introducing yourself to the co-founder, who proposed this idea at first? Do you know?
I reached out to Devere because I was like, hey, I need some writers for my site. And I knew he was writing a blog at the time. And
Mhm.
he's like, we're working on this other thing. Don't really have time for that. I was like, all right, so let's just stay in touch. Then he and I just started, we would text all the time and just update. And I remember he told me this had to have been like 2018. He was like, we're developing innovative new products that's going to change the grooming industry. And I was like, I have no idea what that means. Get back to me when you have something to show me. And then when Strix launched, I was the first YouTube video. I think I got it in like December, pre-launch, but they went live January 2019.
Mhm.
And I remember reviewing it. It was the first time I had ever considered a makeup product, and I was on camera all the time. So then that first 3 or 4 months that I had Strix, I was like, I'm using this a lot more than I ever thought. And then I was like, the more I dug into the space, because I was already looking in like fashion, D2C, CPG, I was like, there's like nothing else like this. And then the big like light bulb moment for me was when I went to film at the Allen Edmonds factory, and I had a videographer like that was the most professional thing I had done to that point. And I used the concealer that morning because I was traveling with my family and I was eating like crap, and I was like red on my face, and I was like, all right, this is really cool. And so by that point, they had launched and they were going into XRC. And when they started XRC was like, Devere, like, you need somebody to share the load with this. Like, you got a lot of work to do. And
Yeah.
that's when Devere reached out and was like, would you be interested? And I was like, you know what? I've been using this constantly. I really like it. And what we later found out is we both had the experience on our wedding day where we both had breakouts and we had to cover them. And it was like, that was Devere's original light bulb moment. I had that experience and I was like, okay, something will happen about this later. And then it all like came full circle later on.
Wow. So when you decided to really go full on board with the team, what were some of the main roles between you and the co-founder? Were you more on the marketing end, or what did that look like?
Yeah, I think I found like the job description that we had wrote back then, and it's only half of what I do now. And I think this is what's interesting for your audience too, is like my idea of a co-founder was I actually didn't have like a perception of it, but also the fact that you could come in later to a company. Like, I mean,
Yeah.
Elon Musk did this. He wrote, everybody else out, and he's the founder of Tesla. But just coming in so early, because even back then I was like, oh, they're really established, but companies they have a very long life cycle. And so
Yeah.
when I joined, I was like, all right, I'll build a YouTube channel for Stryx, and I'll do like very content marketing things. But it ended up being a lot more on the side of like fundraising and hiring. And like, that's the job of a co-founder versus, like a marketer necessarily. And
Definitely.
so my role has definitely evolved since I joined, just because I had enough sales background and experience, and I managed teams and I had hired and everything. And so like bringing that to the table, I didn't expect, but I've definitely, leaned in a big way.
Definitely. Just to give the audience some scope and size of when you'd actually join the team, what was offered? Do you know how many SKUs and what that was?
Yeah. So at the time, this would have been the fall of 2019. We
Mhm.
only had the concealer and the tinted moisturizer. So we had the 3 shades of the concealer, 3 shades of the tinted moisturizer. And then after I joined is when we went from 3 to 10 products and, finished XRC, raised some money, and went into CVS. Like, all that stuff really happened afterward, because it's true, when you have when you go from one person thinking about and working on this all day, every day, to 2 people, and
Yeah.
then 3, and it's like the force multiplier every time.
So Strix being really a pioneer in this space, I'm curious, what does the prototyping process and formulating process look like with you? It's really a woman's dominated industry to date. So what does that look like from your POV?
Yeah. So the initial stuff, like the concealer, I don't know if I got one over here, but the idea of this like pen style concealer and the custom tooling behind it actually got us rejected by a lot of manufacturers. They were like, why don't you just take the jar concealer that we have right here and like start with that? And we're like, no, we want like this thing. So we worked with Prime Studio, who did Harry's, Gobi toothbrush. They do OXO products, Axe. They're a world-renowned industrial design firm. So they did like the initial engineering, and then we had to find a manufacturing partner that would then, take us on, because we were small, but then also were willing to work with the fact that we had this very specific design in mind for the concealer. And so it's a lot. It's finding that right person, right? Like, we got rejected by a bunch of factories, and
Mhm.
so there's definitely like a throwing spaghetti against the wall in a way, and finding out, all right, yeah, you got to find the right person for this.
Definitely. An avenue I really want to roll into and how I actually discovered you was your marketing and your activeness on socials. I'm curious, what were some of the main marketing strategies, especially with new product launches you're joining, to really convince consumers in this new space?
Yeah, when I started, I was like, all right, I'll build a YouTube channel. I've done it before. I'll do it again. You really have to explain these products and show how they work, because there is such a lack of education for guys, and the
Yeah.
fact that we are formulated specifically for men, and like there's a lot of education to go into there. And I found out very quickly it's harder. It was way harder to grow a YouTube channel in 2019 than what I did in 2015. And
Mm.
I had lunch with a friend, and he was like, this TikTok thing, it's a powerful editor and distribution. I was like, all right, let me go try this at home. And in the first, video, they say now that when you do your first video, you get an initial boost just to like get you hooked on the platform.
Yeah.
And the first video had like 300,000 views. And I was like,
Wow.
it would take me a year to get 300,000 views on the Stryx YouTube channel. What's going over here on TikTok? And then it was just a lot of experimentation. Like I think our first 20,000 followers came in 3 months, and then it was just like plateau. And it was just like almost, almost a year of just grinding to try and get to the next stage. And
Mm.
now I think today we're around 250,000, but it happened, it happened very slowly. It wasn't that hockey stick that everybody hopes for, but the idea of TikTok is very similar to YouTube. It's like show
Mm.
how it works, talk about the why of why we exist, why we have to exist, and even just some of the behind the scenes stuff. I did that video where I explained how we pitched to Target. Somebody was like, "How did you get into Target?" And I was like, "Here's exactly how you pitch a retailer." And so even
Yeah.
digging into some of the behind the scenes stuff has been, you know, very well received, which is pretty cool.
Amazing. From that marketing, can you depict what your main demographic is? Maybe say age wise.
You and me are
Yeah.
the target. Well, we're the target, but actually our customers span, I think 30% of our customers are of age of 40. It's like there's a big chunk of guys that are not just millennial dudes.
Yeah.
But it's really just like any guy that has some comfort around skincare that wants that next step. It's like you can only, moisturize your face so much to, clear up some of the imperfections. If you
Mm.
want that instant fix, this is what it is. And so we have teenagers that deal with acne. We have millennials that have dark under eye circles because they're on Zoom all day. And we got older guys that are aging and they want, these instant fixes to aging. And so I think it makes it more challenging. There's other brands that have jumped into this space and like really target Gen Z, but no, but I like, to me, you have to cover the whole spectrum because
Yeah.
every piece of data shows that guys over the age of 30 and 40, they want like a men's brand like this, and there just isn't one today. And so that's our space to fill.
Definitely. Mentioning in that TikTok video about your target pitch, I kind of want to roll into the pitching process to retail, especially in a new space like this. What has your POV been like in that process? And have you ever had any backlash on any of those pitches?
No backlash in the retailer pitches, backlash certainly on social media. Um, but the way that we come into it, actually our target buyer said this when we spoke to her a couple of weeks ago. She said like our brand deserves to stand really tall because we're doing something that's so new to the category. And we've had discussions with every major retailer because they're all interested in men. They all want to like bring the male consumer in, the male customer in, but they don't always follow through on it. As you
Yeah.
can see, like Target definitely does. But just saying like, you can only bring in so many more beard brands or razor brands or XYZ brands, but like we're completely additive to the category. And we don't want to be in the beauty section because we know our customers are intimidated to go over there. We got to put this in the men's grooming section. And so like that message has definitely been really well received, which is why we were there, in CVS and Nordstrom. We're in their New York City shop and we're right alongside Kiehl's and Jack Black and
Mhm.
Clinique. It's like for us to be this young brand with a unique new perspective alongside, 40, 50-year-old brands is really cool.
That's amazing. I want to roll into something that recently happened, and it's an announcement I saw on LinkedIn, was your Shark Tank opportunity. I'm curious, what was that experience like for you, especially when you first received the acceptance email, making it on the show? Like, what was going through your head, especially as like a young founder, a young brand at least, going into this?
Well, I think as a founder and entrepreneur, you have to be a little bit crazy. So the entire time I was like, we're going to get on. It's like, we're definitely going to get on. But I know how many people end up getting dropped off at each, stage of the process
Yeah,
before, filming everything. And so I think just going into it with a confidence of like, we have something unique, we have traction, and we are a good deal. Like we're a good fit for the Sharks. It's like all three of those things to me were very apparent. And then we just prepared like crazy. So like we had raised money before, so we knew the kind of questions we would get. Obviously we studied the show. I have a whole spreadsheet where I was like, what were the asks, what were the questions, what was the final deal. And then we also had like each shark, we had a particular reason that we wanted to work with them so that if it came up or we could speak to it.
mm,
So just like really over preparing for being on the show. And then being on camera all day on TikTok, you kind of get used to that. Is like,
true.
how do you answer a question succinctly that could also make good TV. That also answers the question. It's like there's a lot of those reps that came into there too. But the whole process, I mean, it was almost a year long. So it's like
Wow.
both Shark Tank and Target started in January of 2021, and both of them happened just in the past 2 months, which is crazy.
Yeah. Wow, that's amazing. So I've had some guests on actually prior who's been on the show as well, and they describe this spike after their episode airs. I'm curious if Strix have seen a similar outcome as well. What did the website look like after that airing date?
Yeah, it was crazy because the traffic was so concentrated to that 8 p.m. Eastern showing. And I've heard this from a few others as well, is like the West Coast, I guess, isn't as into Shark Tank, or the fact that it's later. I don't know what it is, but it was the really big spike right at the premiere. But then there was this extra wave that came in, and this is a more recent thing, but this extra wave that came in when it hit Hulu, right? When it hit
Wow.
streaming and it hit the streaming services. So you had like a really big spike on Friday, and like, we did everything to prepare for that. But then like Saturday, Sunday, and even into Monday, you just kept getting this like additional wave of people that were clearly finding it. Uh, you know, whether it was from my TikTok saying we were on there and then to go seek it out, or the fact that people catch up on Hulu and DVR. And so it seems like it's gone from being like this really intense 1 day thing to just being like pretty intense, but then spread out over 3 more days.
Got it. Moving into Strix today, what would you say is the top seller if you can depict that?
For a while it was our energizing eye tool,
Mhm.
but I've had one TikTok that just keeps going forever, and it's about our tinted moisturizer. And I think it's because it is a very visual product. Like in the video I have a pimple on my forehead and I just like rub it off. Essentially, it's like, it looks like I erased it.
Yeah,
But it's also something else that's very new to guys, and like guys are kind of willing to try it. It's $25, so it's not really expensive. It's kind of impulse. And if we get the benefits from it, then it's huge. And so, yeah, the tinted moisturizer is actually the thing we get the most questions about now. Like, why isn't it in Target? And it's like, it wasn't our best seller when we went to Target last year, but that's part of what we're trying to get for next year.
interesting. So I'd like to conclude each episode with this. If you could share one piece of advice with an aspiring entrepreneur, maybe something you've learned or regret along the way, what would that be?
You definitely have to surround yourself with people that are like working towards a similar goal, that are a few steps ahead of you. So like my mentorship now, I had it when I was at my previous jobs. I would always search for like, somebody else that could really mentor me. And now I'm looking for other founders that are like 3 and 4 steps ahead of me, that are willing to pay it back a little bit. And now it's really interesting. I've now become that person to a few others, where, I'm a few steps ahead of some other people, and I'm happy to share that as well. But they always say, you're this average of the 10 people you surround yourself with, or something like that. It's just like, find your tribe, find the people that want to push you forward and want to grow, alongside of you, because there's nothing more powerful than a strong network.
Definitely. Well, John, thank you so much for joining me today. And to the listeners out there, make sure to check out Strix at strix.com.